Everything seems to be going alright. What the? Okay. What, he got one shot? Okay, now we're gonna... Oh, come on, man. This is so frustrating. He got one shot? First mechanic, bro. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another video. Bogdan here. Today, we're taking a look at a plus 18 quarter stars that I ran on my 380 item level Protection Warrior. Oh, now I know what you're thinking. No, this is not a carry run. I did not pay for a carry. One of you was wonderful in lending out the key. Let's just say it turned out to be a very interesting run, to say the least. I will share a couple of tips and tricks for you to keep your mindset right in your eyes on the game, because I know that this happens a lot to many people that are pugging keys, and I want to take you a little bit behind the scenes in my thought process and how I approach things when I start to get frustrated with people doing mistakes. I think this run is the perfect run to help you in the best way possible. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Now let's get right into it. Okay, so here we are in Court of Stars. We are with Mex. He is one of our viewers. Syndragosa is a DK. He's a pug. The hunter is also a pug, and the shaman is also a pug. Now my item level is 380. Mex is about 415, and you have the DK and the hunter, which are about 412, and then the shaman is the second least, geared at about 405. So we go in first pull. I'm going to use shield wall ahead of time, and I'm going to interrupt the sentry. I do lose a little bit of threat here, and the hunter's going to get leaped by one of the cats, and he's going to get one shot here in just a second. A lot of people are dropping low. He is going to release, come back. And because I did not pull this guy, I pull him pretty late. I'm going to go grab the cat and the other guard now. And what you will see is a lot of positioning mistakes, a lot of different things that are preventing people from maximizing their damage. So that's where that guy got hit by one of the cat leaps. The DK. My main focus here, so he gets the heal off the construct. I am mostly focused on dodging the frontals from the guards and kicking the suppress. So I kick the suppress there. I know that the next cast is going to be from the construct. We actually managed to get that. The charging strike ends up one-shotting the DK because he was stepping right inside of it. A little bit unfortunate, but what can you do? This is what happens with pugs. They don't really watch their positioning. So we managed to finish off all of the mobs. We only have one guard left. He is raged out of his mind. He's pretty big. I go pull the dogs. I immediately put Skull on the Arcanist. I stick around to also get the threat, but kick that first cast. I pre-wall here, and then I start using my normal rotation. I make sure to dodge the initial frontals from the guards, and I make a priority to keep hitting all of the mobs. Great link from the shaman here. And of course, I keep sidestepping all of the stuns, and I keep doing damage to the mobs as much as possible. I am sitting in defensive stance. And yes, even though I am 380, I do have the 4-set bonus. It's pretty much LFR, not LFR. Yeah, actually, no, it's LFR type item level. So these mobs are raging. This is where I actually not going to take any damage. I do have a lot of absorbs. I tell the DK, I'm basically testing him out. I said, grip the sentry and slow her down, because I want to test to see if he is a reliable person in this dungeon. We'll see in just a second. So I don't see any grip. I don't see any slow. I just decide to charge in stun and basically focus the sentry down. That's why I also assigned the skull to it. I want to make sure that I'm not knocked up by any of the tornadoes here. So I'm sidestepping very, very slowly. I'm going to wait for the construct to do the smash, and now I'm leaping into the other pack. Make sure I don't pull anything that's on the inside, because the construct started his cast. I am not in a worry that's going to melee me from behind. And I'm very safe here. I have 2 stacks of shield wall. I have everything up and nothing to worry about. And I can focus on doing a little bit of damage. This is where I get knocked up by one of the tornadoes. I keep sidestepping, avoiding the frontals. And this is where I actually want to check. See, I check. The tower is still up. So because it's only this mob and it's also raging, I don't want to face tank it. I decide to take the time to go and do the tower down. This is something that the healer should do, or one of the range DPS should do on the first pull. They haven't done it. That's fine. And this is where the DK, again, does a mistake. He should not have positioned like that. He should not be in that area. And he ends up pulling the 2 cats that are inside. I immediately go, I get the threat on it, assign Skull to one, so and X to the other, so the guys know. This is where I instantly want to pull both sentries, and you saw me there use Spell Reflect. If I haven't used Spell Reflect, the torches they initially cast would have brought me down to like 20, maybe even 10% HP on my item level and stat distribution on this warrior. So because I used Spell Reflect, I took 0 damage, immediately assigned Skull to the cat again, because that's the most dangerous target. I stun that guard, and then I go immediately pull the other pack because I want to maximize the time in this dungeon. I have both stacks of shield wall up here. You will see I will do a slight mistake here coming up. So nothing too special about this pack. The only inconvenience is the storming. I want to make sure that I don't get there. I got hit by a storming, but it actually knocked me out of the range of the frontal from the guard, so I was pretty safe. This is where you see this globule, this elemental, he's ranged. So he is raging right now. He's going to do a charged blast, and this is going to one-shot me. As you can see, boom, it one-shot me. I could have used Spell Reflect. Actually, I couldn't because it was on cooldown, but I could have used Shield Block, and I didn't, and that pretty much cost me my life. So now I'm coming back. The Hunter also ended up, I believe, going down. He was also running back, yeah. And this is where, guys, some people did the towers, which was pretty good, and now we poisoned the flask. Ended up pulling the boss, and I'm going to tank it here. It was a little bit of a dangerous pull because that patrolling pack was very close. I always want to tank the boss like this. This is actually the problem. On the first cast on this boss, the DK got one shot. He did not pre-move, which is so bad because he's also the only combat res that we have in the group. And it's actually the point where I start thinking, okay, there have been, for no reason, 4 deaths. The only combat res in the group dies at 100% HP on this boss. I would get triggered. If I was any of these other people, I would get triggered. So the thought process is like this. If anybody, well, Mex is not going to leave, but if the shaman or the hunter, maybe even the DK, is going to end up leaving this key, I mean, I'm not going to be upset. I understand why they would do it. It is pretty frustrating for your only combat res to die on the first mechanic on the first boss and also get one shot by several other mechanics up until now, do so many mistakes, not really capitalize on callouts from the tank, being basically an unreliable person. We are right now 4-manning this boss. And if anybody's going to get one shot by any of the beams, I know that this key is pretty much over. Not necessarily because it's unrecoverable time-wise, but because most likely somebody is going to leave. So we continue dealing with the boss. The mechanics are not that hard to see and not that hard to handle. And also, at this point, I want to make sure that we don't get any strange combos, like any of the storming spawning in a random location right before one of the beams hits us, or the frontal cone and behind the boss cone that stuns and does a tremendous amount of damage from the boss hits either me or any of the ranged DPS. Max pretty much has to take care of himself. He needs to look out for his own positioning. Nothing much I can do on his end. Every single time he does the snare, make sure you jump 3 times, and that's going to get removed. Okay, and this is where I am going to make sure that as soon as the boss reaches 25%, I'm not going to waste any time on it. Immediately, I turn around and I jump and I pull the next mob. When the combat ends on the boss after a short RP, the door behind me is going to open up. You don't want to focus on kicking that heal, because when the mob is alone, he doesn't heal. I'm going to focus suppress. I always kick suppress here, and I always do the charge smash outside of the way. So this is the mistake, number one mistake that tanks do, is they always put the charge smash on the path that the group is going to move in, and that's going to end up having somebody get one shot. Again, I focus, kick suppress, and this is also something that I've been doing for a very long time, ever since Legion. I always go into this corner. I do the charging smash there. And it always 100% of the time works. I did have a couple of times, people say, hey, that's not the way. I'm like, that's not why I'm doing it. It's not because I don't know the way of the dungeon. It's because that's going to prevent a random death by putting it into a path that nobody's going to go into and clearing the path. So this is where I charge in, immediately pull Spell Reflect up, and I'm going to let the first cast on the imps go off, and that's why you see me do so much damage there, because they all cast at the same time into my Spell Reflect, and it ended up reflecting it onto them. I'm going to do a short stun on the Inquisitor, kick this cast, and we're going to move into the next pack right here. He is raging, so I don't want to face tank him. I go get the Mistress, and I go get the dog. And immediately lose threat on the dog. For some reason, people were focusing the dog. You don't want to focus the dog here. You want to focus the Mistress if you're DPS. On Shadow Smash, I Spare Reflect, and that does a large chunk of her HP. It's like 18, 20% on a fortified weak. Again, the same thing. I charge in. I don't have Spare Reflect, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to AoE silence them by AoE taunting with the talent, and then I'm going to Shockwave all of them. They're a little bit staggered because we started using certain abilities. So this is where I asked the DK, the DK to get the buff. Now, somebody goes and pulls the Enforcer. The DK doesn't get the buff. I like to get the buffs before starting to clear any trash in this area. This is my #1 recommendation. Always get the buffs. The reason why you see so many people do very, very well is because they focus on progressing the dungeon. So when you focus on progressing the dungeon, you also want to progress the dungeon with all the tools necessary. So get the buffs and then go progress the dungeon. So we pulled the Enforcer. I wanted to pull this Enforcer with a few mobs, and I was actually hoping for these guys to start getting some of the buffs. The DK, I mouse over the DK, still didn't get the buff. I'm getting a little bit frustrated at this point, and I use caps lock to basically say, hey, click the damn barrel, And he still doesn't do it. Eventually he does it. And I see the trap is up, so the hunter can use the trap, or somebody that has blacksmithing. We are going to defeat this mob, and then we're going to go use the trap. And at this point, I'm thinking, we defeated an Enforcer. The second one already spawned on this side of the map. Most likely there is no reason for us, except maybe we need some extra count to go on the right side of the map. So the best thing that you can do right now is defeat this mob, go activate the trap, get something crazy. I think it's like 75% damage increase on the next mini boss, and we'll take it from there. So we're going to say, I actually said other side first because I did not check on the respawn of the Enforcer. But I saw that the Enforcer was on this side, so I decided to actually cancel my own call out. I end up pulling this pack, gonna kick that mob, and I'm going to make sure that when the Mistress casts, I'm going to Spare Reflect so that she takes a lot of damage. Look at her percent right here. So you'll see that the Mistress is around 50%, and that did 20% of her HP. So one Spare Reflect did 20% of the Mistress's HP. It's really good. I asked the Hunter to pre-use the trap so that the mini boss already spawns. We have as less downtime as possible. He does it a little bit late, so the mini boss is going to come in a little bit late. You also want to be very careful because the pack that is patrolling, if you taunt at the right time or if you use the wrong ability, it will also pull the mob. And you also want to drag it right on top of the trap. It's going to activate it, and now it's going to take extra damage. That's why you see the Watchful Eye going down so fast. So we end up defeating this mini boss pretty fast. I also want to indicate to the team that I am going to go towards the next Enforcer. And for some reason here, either because of a missed position, I think it was a missed kick, something like that. Actually, no, the Hunter ends up getting one shot. I do see it. I'm going to place a world marker here for people to know where to line of sight. Before pulling the Enforcer, I'm going to check to see if the Hunter has rezzed. I'm going to rebuff, immediately pull the Enforcer, and make sure I position her correctly so my team can line of sight on the world marker that I put down. I'm actually going to go with them. The reason why I go with them, here's the reason why. I don't want to face tank this mob because I know that a lot of members of my team are frustrated right now. Like, a lot of people are frustrated. There are some messages in chat with Shaman going like, really? You know, how'd you get one shot? Why didn't you use defensives? All of that. We still have Turtle up by the Hunter. He didn't use it. He could have prevented his own death. So there's a lot of mistakes going on in the group, especially between the Hunter and the DK right now. And I know that the Shaman is probably pretty frustrated. In fact, his frustration is going to go up at a certain point because he's also going to start doing some mistakes of his own. We pulled this mini boss. This mini boss is not very difficult to deal with. Just make sure you don't get hit by the frontal because it's going to stun you and also do quite a bit of damage. This leap is going to knock you away as well as do a lot of damage, and immediately he's going to cast Shockwave. The best thing you can do as a tank is not charge in, you know, and just here was a mistake. If you actually stay within his circle, that red circle that indicates the position of the mob, you are going to get stunned regardless if you're behind the mob or not. This is where he's gonna enrage. That's why position it facing that way. Nobody's going to be positioned that way. I mean, you know, with this group, you almost never know. I'm gonna leap here out of the way of that shockwave. Make sure I don't get knocked up by one of the tornadoes. And this is where I'm checking percentage. I know we only need one more pack, so I type it. And I say after, right? After, because the patrol is coming, so I want to pull the boss right now. I taunt the boss, and I bring it into position. And I do it this way because I also want to indicate the direction in which we are going to position ourselves after the fire patches go on the floor. So I'm going to kick that, and I'm going to rely on my team to kick the next ones. The fire is on the ground. I just backpedal a little bit, indicating to the team the direction in which we're going to move. Those mobs get deleted. Somebody ends up actually kicking her there. And there's going to be a great overlap here where you can AoE taunt as a tank on this next one. If you're a warrior, this next one, she's going to start casting as soon as the imps are up, and they're going to start casting. So this is a perfect overlap for you to use your AoE taunt and silence also the mobs and also kick the boss's cast. And right here, anything can happen. I know both the Hunter and the DK, they're not very good with using their cooldowns. As you can see, the DK has anti-magic zone. He had it the entire time. The Hunter is yelling at the Shaman to use Bloodlust when he could have done it himself. And we already said to Bloodlust this boss, but he ends up not Bloodlusting this boss. And you do want to Bloodlust this boss. By the way, this boss is much more dangerous than the other ones. You see that stacking buff on the boss's HP? That looks the same as Hellfire from the Warlock icon. If she gets too high of a stack, when she does the AoE fire, she's just going to one-shot. So in high Tyrannical, I'm talking like 24, 25, 26 keys. This is one of the most dangerous mobs. You want to save every single cooldown. You want to use the major cooldowns. You want to use Potion. You want to use Bloodlust, everything on this boss. Because the last boss, virtually, you can live forever. There are tips and tricks as you can do to live the last boss forever. So the Hunter almost goes down here. We're just at 5 stacks. And this is where I expect people... See, I see them actually taking that. I should have turned around because I wanted to pull this pack. So here's something I didn't see. I didn't see the Shaman go. And he ends up pulling the Imp pack. Why would he pull the impact? Makes no sense. Because there's nobody there to interrupt the impact. So then I see fire coming. He gets one shot. I take a lot of damage. I end up getting one shot. And this is where I was like, okay, the Shaman is frustrated. He starts doing a lot of mistakes himself. And I ask, yo, you know, where is everybody? Because the truth is, I did type in chat, but people suffer from short-term memory. And it doesn't matter if you told them 5 seconds ago, 30 seconds ago, or, 3 minutes ago. They're going to completely forget. So I wait for the patrol. I avoid that. I go, I don't want to pull that pack. I want to pull the imps. So I see the patrol going away. Again, the DK mispositions end up pulling the 2 demons on that pack. So we have to deal with all of them. Fortunately, it's Tyrannical. These imps have next to no HP. I have all of the cooldowns. The Mistress, somebody ends up getting a threat on her. I immediately taunt. I use Paraflect. And we defeat these 2 mobs. That could have been another wipe. That could have been pretty dangerous. Now, at this point, I know this key is not going to be a 2 chest. We have done way too many mistakes. I'm anticipating the DK to also, continue doing mistakes, and you will see just in a couple of seconds here in the key, he's going to continue doing some mistakes. So we end up finding the mob, and here we're going to fight the demon. One very interesting thing about the demon is when he does Vampiric Claws, you always want to Spell Reflect. It does no damage to the mob. However, it prevents you from taking any damage. And when he uses Vampiric Claws, he heals for a large percentage of his HP. And especially in Fortified, that could be like 8%, 10% of his HP easily. By using Spell Reflect, you make the mob heal for 0. And when you don't have Spell Reflect, you also want to use a Spell Block. Don't use it on the AoE, Shadow Bolt. That doesn't matter. That doesn't do nearly as much damage as the healing that you're preventing from Vampiric Claws. And also, if you pre-cast Shadow Spell Block on, Spell Reflect on the claws, you can actually use 2 of them back to back. And this is where the mob is going to go down, and we're gonna pick up the keys and go for the last boss. Now, here's something very interesting. I see that somebody takes the initiative here, and the hunter says, he can bait. So as soon as the hunter says that he can bait, I type to everybody, stack in melee. Now, what does tend to happen here is I would rather not tell people to stack in melee, because what you will see from the DK, and I want to take full responsibility for this, is he goes melee brain here. He's like, oh, tank told me to stack into melee, so I'm not going to pay attention to any of the mechanics. And as you can see here, just watch it, he gets one shot. Again, our only combat res in the group dies to the first mechanic on a boss. It's just extremely frustrating. There's no two ways about it. It's extremely frustrating. And everybody in the group is going to start flaming them. This is where the things are going to go south. People see, the shaman already was like, really? People are so frustrated. They're frustrated out of their mind, and they just want to get out of this key as fast as possible. By the way, your role as a tank in this fight is to eat up the circles on the ground, just so your team doesn't get randomly stunned. Just make sure you use them after he does the lines on the ground and not before he does the lines on the ground. Now you will get one shot. And you also want to eat as many of the stormings as possible during storming weeks, because that's going to prevent people from getting knocked up. Like there, I ate one. He's going to charge. He's going to do the AoE damage, so I'm going to eat a stun. Because the DK is dead. So the DK, what the DK can do, they can anti-magic shell and run through a bunch of them, and they're not going to get stunned. And they can also Icebound Fortitude, because during Icebound Fortitude, you are immune to stuns. You can also use Icebound Fortitude to remove a stun. And there's not much happening right now at this point in the boss fight. The only thing that can go south is if somebody gets stunned right before the lines on the ground happen, or if somebody mispositions and they stay in the clump where there's a lot of the images of the boss, and they're going to take extra damage. So right now, we're pretty much reliant on the healer to keep people alive. It's very good that he used Link there, because I can spam Ignore Pain, and that's going to actually heal people up, because it provides me with a little bit of HP. And I could have also used my heal, which I shouldn't. That was a misplay on my end. The boss is looking not that low, because we are 4-manning this boss. I am not the best geared, so my DPS pretty much sucks. The shaman is trying to do as much DPS as possible. He cannot really make up for a DPS that has been, completely out of the fight for the entirety of the fight. As you can see, the DK wasn't able to do much in that fight. He was just one shot by the first mechanic, and pretty much everybody else had to carry him throughout this this fight. Pretty much the dungeon, because that's at the end. I'm not going to show you guys, but there's a... So here, the shaman gets one shot. He immediately anks. and we finish the key. But yeah, that's something that tends to happen, and people start flaming one another. Yeah, so that's something that typically tends to happen in keys. You know, a lot of people do a lot of mistakes, and it becomes increasingly frustrating. So the best thing that you can do is have the mindset of, what can I do to improve the team? I know everybody's frustrated. I know that at this point, people are contemplating just, you know, right click, leave party. I understand why, especially when you watch a run like that. This guy that is pretty decent item level doing all of these mistakes, so we're kind of forced to 4-man. Actually, we're not 4-manning, we're like 3.5-manning this dungeon. It just becomes increasingly crazy. That's why I was sitting in defensive stance the entire key, because I just didn't want to add to the frustration. I didn't want to put myself in a situation, even if I didn't take any extra damage in battle stance. Being in defensive stance gives the healer the impression of, hey, at least this guy is not trying to, you know, mess around, goof around, you know, troll or anything like that. He's actually trying to get it done. That was my thought process going throughout this key. I hope this helps you, this mindset and this idea. This is what happens very, very often in pugs. If you think you can use this knowledge to apply into your future keys and into the next keys that you're going to be running either this season, I think it's going to help you improve. I think it's going to help you like what you do more and actually have a better outcome at the end of the day. Don't start flaming people. Don't start keyboard worrying other people. There's no point in doing that. It's not going to help anybody. If you found this message helpful, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for more content. If you haven't already, check out another video that I created. And as always, I will see you guys in the next video.